Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hi, everyone. This is Lori LeBay, the host of Alzheimer's Speaks Radio, and I hope you're all doing well. I'm in Minnesota, and I have to share with you, last weekend everybody was in shorts, enjoying the sun, raking the leaves, going for walks, and it is snowing. The big storm missed us just by one city yesterday. They got 5 to 6 inches, and a couple towns over got a foot. But it is snowing in Minnesota today, so we have no idea if our fertilizer is going to be any good on the lawn or not. But things could be a lot worse. It's great that it's Friday, and I'm really excited about our show today. I can't wait to have this conversation, and I hope you as the audience will join in with us. For those of you that are new, I just want you to know a little bit about Alzheimer's Speaks and what we're about. Bottom line is we're an advocacy-based company in Minnesota providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We truly are about raising the voice of everyone. That means those living with dementia, those caring for people with dementia, both family and friends, as well as advocates. Or people who are just interested. It's about awareness and education, building a toolkit to empower all of us to have better lives, because dementia is a disease. It's not something that we should become as a person or as a caregiver or care partner. It's just one of those things that we have to deal with. So at our core, we really believe that collaboratively we can win this battle. But again, it's about sharing our knowledge and our wisdom, because everybody is coming from a different place. There's a saying in the dementia world, once you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person with Alzheimer's. But bottom line is, if you've met a person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. If you have met one care partner, you've met one care partner. And then you multiply that by every environment is different. So there is no, pill. There is no magic pill. There is no one way that is going to make life perfect. If there was, we'd all be lining up for it in all other areas of our life as well. So I want to also thank our audience for making us the #1 influencer on the internet for Alzheimer's disease. We were recognized by ShareCare Now and Dr. Oz, and the only way that happened was through you, our listeners, by you liking us and sharing us. And I would very much appreciate if you continue to do that, because Alzheimer's Speaks, again, this isn't the Lori LeBay show. This is about us working together, sharing knowledge. So if you like the show and like the resources that we have on alzheimersspeaks.com, please share that with people. I've been on this journey myself for 30 years with my own mother, and I know how critical getting information in the hands of someone who needs it, how important it really and truly is. If you're listening to the show live, you can participate. You can call in live with your question, and that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. 4757, or you can utilize the chat box as well. And just type in your comment or question. I'll be monitoring that as we go, and I know that our both of our guests would love to field any questions that you have. And before I introduce them, I just want to mention again, if you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, you can go to Alzheimer's Disease International. That's www.alz.co.uk. And I am just starting to work with, I'm very excited about this mission with Choral Health. They have launched a music app called Music First, and I call it your music prescription, and it's therapeutic music that heals, inspires, and supports. And you can now test that out for a 3-hour period. And if you want to purchase it, it's only $4.99 a month, but it's really cool. It's all research-based. So I highly recommend that you check them out as well, and that's choralhealth.com, C-O-R-O, and then health, HEALTH.com. Wonderful organization, and you can look at Music First. They also have Choral Faith, which is a very interesting program, too, that these both have thousands of applications that people can pick from. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our guest today, and I have heard so much rattle in the cage about these two individuals. I am just thrilled to death to have them on the show. Tom and Karen Brenner are researchers, consultants, educators, and writers. Tom is a gerontologist who works as an education and research specialist in the Department of Aging, and Karen was a Montessori educator and has specialized in working with children who are deaf or had communication disorders. Both of them are contributing writers and on-air presenters for the National Public Radio, and they recently won a Professional Journalism Society Award for Excellence in Writing. Tom and Karen have combined their expertise and their experiences from Brenner Pathways, which is a consulting and education company. The Brenners present seminars, do training workshops throughout the United States, and they recently did the keynote speaking at the Alzheimer's Association Education Conference. The Brenners have published tons of things in magazines and journals throughout the U.S. as well as internationally. And they are contributing writers to the Alzheimer's Reading Room, which, if you're not familiar with that, is an absolutely fantastic venue that Bob DeMarco has, and also the Fisher Center for Alzheimer's and Research Foundation, their blog, which, again, is just a wealth of information. Their first book here is called You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, the Montessori Method for Positive Dementia Care. And the book is available both on Amazon and Kindle. So welcome, Tom. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, Lori. And after that introduction, I have to pinch myself and say, are you talking about me? Because has been a rather incredible, wonderful journey that Karen and I have been on, and very lucky people indeed. And I think you're the type of a person that understands when I say we're lucky to be doing this work. So,
oh, definitely. It is a gift. If you're in this field, because you really almost can't help it, I mean, it is a true gift. If you're here because it's a job, it's a job. Mm-hmm. But for those of us that have a passion to really make a difference, it is so much fun and so energizing and so neat to connect with others. How are you doing today, Karen?
I'm fine, Lori, thanks. And thanks again for this wonderful opportunity to talk about our new book, You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, and as well as hopefully connecting with your listeners.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I was so excited when I got the book. I love even just the color and design of the book. It's really warm and welcoming, and I know when I opened it up, it was just like this blossom of positive energy. I mean, it just like came
Lori.
out of the package.
Lori, that's it.
Yeah.
You definitely said it.
And it's and I've heard so much about you guys, and actually have tried to connect over the years, and it just hadn't happened. And then our friend Carol Larkin hooked us up, and timing is everything.
That's right.
I'm a firm believer in this, but the way this book is designed, it is such an easy read with just incredible gifts, page after page, to people reading the book. And, you've got these guideposts there that really help center people that are caring for people. I love this one here. We do the work with them, not for them. And that is something that we really have to remember, because as caregivers, we think it's all about us giving to them and not getting filled or not engaging. It's just a task. And even though we know better, we don't act appropriately all the time when it comes to, how would we like to be cared for. So the book is filled with great stories and pictures and lots of space to be able to take notes in big print, which I am so thrilled with now that I'm in my 50s. So kudos to designing the book. Very, very, very well done. So let's talk about, let me stop yapping and let's hear from you guys. I'm going to throw this first question out to Tom. And Tom, so how did you come up with the idea to do this project together?
Well, Lori, Karen had been, as you have stated, Montessorian for a considerable amount of time. And so I have been exposed to the Montessori principles for, 30 years at least. And so I had a basic understanding of the principles. And then my own children were exposed to it. They went to Montessori schools. And I saw the method in action, how they would learn, and how the process was so beneficial to their own development. And so this was like in the back of my mind, right? And then all of a sudden I became interested in dementia and dementia care, and especially the tools that were out in the world for caregivers. And so I did a thesis on caregiving and the tools that were out there. And while I was researching the tools that caregivers were given to do the job, frontline staff, this is what the research was primarily about in long-term care facilities. All the information seemed to lead to the concept that the environment that is there for the care seemed to be impacting the work that the caregivers could do or couldn't do, and also it would impact the attitudes of the people with dementia. So there it is. That's kind of where the aha light bulb moment went off. The word environment became the primary issue that I could see, and then as fortunate as I was able to see different environments changing where we were developing more person-centered care in the 90s, and that concept away from the real sterile environment to the more home-like environment. The Montessori method seemed to again indicate that we have to take a deeper look into the type of environment that we're doing the work that we're involved in. So then I said to Karen, I see some parallels here. What do you think? And then Karen, of course, said, of course, there's parallels. It never changes throughout your lifetime. It's the same when you're young as when you're old. You have to have an environment in which you can flourish. So then I started asking Karen, well, what ways do you see that this could be applied to an individual with dementia flourishing? And then Karen and I came up with a number of different approaches as far as, individualizing the Montessori method. And so, Karen, maybe you'd like to say a little bit about how we began that process.
Would you like me to do that, Lori?
Please.
Okay. Well, just very briefly, for people who are not so familiar with the Montessori method, Dr. Maria Montessori was the first woman in Italy to ever become a medical doctor, a physician. And she worked in an insane asylum in Rome with the children of the inmates and also children that were considered defective. And she saw that they needed stimulation through their hands, to work with things through their hands and also the five senses. And working with these children, observing them, seeing what their needs were, she developed a learning program for them. 5 years later, these so-called defective children were tested, and they tested as well or better than the children in the public schools in Rome. So then the government of Italy asked Dr. Montessori to set up a school in these terrible slums in Rome, the San Lorenzo slums. And the first thing she had to do was to teach the children how to keep themselves clean and how to take care of themselves, and then how to take care of their environment. And through this work in the slums of Rome, Dr. Montessori she was the first person to come up with the idea for child-sized furniture. Before that, kids had to make do with furniture that was way too big for them. And so you can begin to see some parallels between what Dr. Montessori discovered 100 years ago and what we're discovering more recently in person-centered care, and that is the environment should fit the needs of the people using it, not that people should have to adapt to whatever environment they find themselves in. So knowing that history of Dr. Montessori and seeing what Tom was researching in person-centered care, it was a real aha moment for us. And we started off volunteering at a local home where Tom had done part of his internship, and they were very gracious. They let us come on Saturdays, and we would try certain of the Montessori exercises. And over a 2-year period of volunteering there, we discovered what part of the Montessori program worked really well and what part didn't work so well. And we also sort of found our feet working together. I was very frightened in the beginning because I had never been around people who had dementia, and Tom really had to coax me into it. And we talk about that in our book, as you may recall, that he really had to talk me into it. But boy, I sure am glad he did.
Well, I am too. It's a marvelous book. I find it fascinating what she was able to do and the differences that they were able to see with her method, and how she applied it. And it's just so nice that people took notice.
That's right.
Because I think sometimes there's a lot of people out there doing things that are different, and they are purposely not noticed. But I think with her method, they were so profound. It's how do you ignore, something like this? So very, very, very interesting. Can you tell us, in terms of dementia, I guess, how did you come to apply this method? How did you start shifting kind of from kids to people with dementia?
That's a great question, Lori. And what we did is we followed Dr. Montessori's example. We observed and we saw the things that people really enjoy doing. And what we found is it's so important to give someone with dementia something to hold in their hand that's meaningful. As you know, and many of the listeners realize, it's really hard for someone with dementia to start a conversation or join in or become engaged out of thin air. So we need to give them something concrete to sort of center them and put them in this present moment. And we have found that things from nature, flowers, herbs, even a cup of snow, which you have a lot of here in Minnesota.
More than we care to have.
Yeah, you do. So, autumn leaves, or maybe stones, river stones that are smooth. Anything like that is very meaningful, as well as something that was meaningful from their own lives. Perhaps someone was a violinist, so we hand them their violin to hold. Or someone loved baseball, so we give them a baseball glove to hold. Something that centers them, and then from that, then we can begin to build on conversation, reminiscence. So that's sort of like the underpinning for all the exercises that we have developed, and as Tom mentioned earlier, the Montessori is based on individuals' interests, passions, and not necessarily just what they did. I mean, maybe someone was a plumber, but maybe he didn't like being a plumber, and so if you hand him a wrench and a pipe, he may not be real happy with that. Maybe his real interest was music. And as you were mentioning that wonderful new app that people can buy, maybe, if you gave him, you plugged him into that app and he could listen to music, then maybe that's how you would reach that person. I think, Tom, if you don't mind, could you talk just a little bit about the procedural memory, because that's really where we get started.
Right. We use the concept that, as Maria Montessori did, that people are learning through their bodies, using the senses. And when we were trying to find out what would work and what wouldn't work, we did use the Montessori tools, and we say tools because they're not toys, and we emphasize that. It's a tool for a child, it's a tool for an adult. We always were saying, at what age does a ball become age appropriate? I mean, a ball is appropriate at any age, right?
Yep.
So anyway, we used some of Maria Montessori's tools, and we built on that. So in other words, the beautiful part of this concept is that your imagination is the only limitation. If a person is at a more advanced stage, some very simplistic tools or tools for engagement can be appropriate at any age, but specifically if a person says, well, I'm not really interested in that, the idea is that Montessori Method has what they call extensions, and you can make anything as complex as you want. You can teach mathematics using the Montessori Method. So what I'm saying is that you start. It's a place to begin, and beginning is the hardest thing to do when you're taking care of a person that has memory loss. And the muscle memory becomes tantamount to a person doing something again and again and again. And that was another beautiful thing that we found is that an exercise such as reading, which uses the muscles of the eye, if people are not, we say use it or lose it, well, that goes for activities of daily living as well. So we knew that there's an interlock here, and so we designed some reading materials in which a person could again get their eyes going to track and read, whether it was one word or a poetry, 2 pages of written words in a larger size font. So in other words, we're testing and trying, but the beautiful thing is the feedback is instantaneous. It's not like we have to go off to a laboratory and say, what did we learn here? We can see what we're learning as we're doing it, and that's the most amazing thing to see. And as others have stated who've also used this method, the measurement becomes, are they having a good time? Are they smiling? And it was a big deal at one time in history to engage a person with dementia for 10 minutes. Well, Karen and I have had conversations and engagements going for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, until a person says it's time to eat, And that became the whole concept, what we could use to start. And we allude in our book, You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello. We have a number of just beginning jump-off points where a person can start to think, how can I, transpose this idea into something else? We saw a wonderful exercise that is a Montessori exercise in which an elder person was with dementia was actually doing leaf washing. Now, if you can imagine this, on a live plant in which a person with dementia had a sponge and they were washing the leaves of a live living plant. And then the reminiscence that came out of that, but imagine what kind of a feeling that person had because now they were caring for something. I mean, boom. is if that isn't a magic moment that a person who's being cared for is given the opportunity to care for a living thing. And that's all right out of the pages of the Montessori playbook. So having said that, I get excited just thinking of our imaginations right now, Lori, are the only thing that prevents us from really developing and continuing onwards with new concepts applying this method.
You know, I love that statement because to me that's one of the things Alzheimer's Speaks is about, is empowering people and getting them to be creative, because as adults, a lot of us get sucked dry. You know, we get thrown into the box and put into the mold, and it's supposed to be done this way and this way only. And I think one of the coolest things about this disease, and I know people will say that I'm nuts saying a cool thing about dementia, but it teaches us to play again. It teaches us to be flexible. It teaches us to be creative. It teaches us to know there is always a better way and to not rely on just having one answer. Because when you have this toolkit built, when you're able to, you know, really analyze the situations you're in and read a person's nonverbals, which so often we just take for granted, but when we're able to raise our skill level in that, the connections we have with people are so much more powerful. And not only to them, but to us. And I think life just becomes richer. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful process of teaching people to be creative. And part of that is helping them remove the fear of failure. And not looking at it as failure, just looking at it as, you know, I have a mantra that it's about progress, not perfection. And to me, my belief is every moment is an opportunity to improve in the next moment. So it's not about failure. It's just about, you know, climbing another step and being able to take what I've done and twist it a little bit differently and not look at it as failure, but look at it as an opportunity to improve. So it's really just switching that mindset. And I think that's, you know, so wrapped into what you guys do with the Montessori Method, because it really is about improvement and life engagement and so forth. Karen, did you want to say anything about my comments at all? It sounded like you might.
Oh no! Well, you sound like all the people we meet at the Montessori conference. You'd fit right in.
Do you own Earth shoes?
I'm a barefoot girl when I can go barefoot.
Because the Montessori philosophy is steeped in this idea of this positive approach and using positive language. And when we say positive language, we don't mean being condescending or phony, but, you know, being very real with someone and saying to someone that who has dementia that you've just spent some time with, you know, I really enjoyed being with you today, or I had a great time and I love your laugh. You make me laugh when you laugh. Something that's genuine and specific. And that's what Dr. Montessori was all about. Instead of saying to a child, don't run, say, please walk. Or instead of saying to a child, don't be mean, say, be kind. It seems so simple and kind of like, what's the big deal? But, oh, boy, try to do it every day in your life, and it's a real challenge. It really is. But language matters, and how we frame language matters. And we found that in our own personal lives. And as you say, this is one of the gifts that's given to us in working with people who have dementia, and also that gift to learn how to be in the moment. Just with that person in this moment, everything else falls away. You're not thinking about what you're going to make for dinner. You're not thinking about anything but just this interaction you're having at that moment. And as you know, that's so powerful, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Now, on your book, you know, your kind of subtitle is the Montessori Method for Positive Dementia. Is there a negative dementia?
Well,
before before Tom answers that, I just want to say, when we wrote that title, it never occurred to us that, but so many people ask us the same question you just asked us. Never occurred to us that we would be implying there was negative. We were just saying that our method is positive. But anyway, when we thought about it, then Tom came up with some things that maybe we do need to work on in the dementia field. Okay?
Yeah, and I guess it wouldn't be a polar opposite. I wouldn't go so far as to say a negative dementia care, although, some people might say that. But I would say a not such a productive dementia care, a less productive dementia care, a way in which we're expecting the same answers that we've always had out of an individual who cannot produce the same answers, but we keep expecting something to stay the same. And if we just keep asking the same questions over and over again of this person that's experiencing memory loss, somehow we're going to break through and they're just going to give us the magic moment and say, oh yeah, that's right, I remember what I had for breakfast. And it's the expectation on the part of the caregiver, and of course there's a great deal of frustration on the part of the person that's being cared for, because they can't give you what you're asking for, and that would not be a very productive interaction or an engagement. So we always like to say, let's look for their strengths and find out what strengths are still existent. And believe you me, some of the wisdom that has been imparted to me personally and to Karen from individuals who are in the last days of their life on earth with dementia, the wisdom that they have imparted to us, it's like just before they left us, the clouds separated and the wisdom came down upon us, and they showered us with a nugget or a jewel of wisdom. And we said, well, we wouldn't have gotten that if we weren't looking for a more positive expectation from this process. So I think the answer to why would you use a word like positive, it's because if we look at things in a negative light as explorers who are trying to find the new world here, and we think, well, there's nothing out here but vast empty water, we're not expecting to discover a whole land of opportunity in which we could provide better care or care that's more appropriate for our loved ones. So it's a success and failure issue. If it's not working, we want people to say, well, let's look at this positively. If it's not working, let's do something different. And thinking out of the box, as you know, is from reading our book, You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, there's your comparison. We're not saying goodbye. We're not going to say goodbye. We're going to say hello, hello, hello. And I can guarantee you that more often than not, we're going to be extremely surprised at what an individual human being is able to give us in terms of understanding and wisdom through this terrible circumstance. I mean, there's no way we're going to say this is a hunky-dory situation we're finding us in, but it doesn't help any of us if we look at everything like woe is me, woe is that person, woe is everything, because that's not the key that's going to unlock success. So that's why we use the word positive. Let's be positive about what we're doing. We're not saying to be a Pollyanna and say, oh boy, isn't this the greatest thing that ever happened to mom or dad or my husband or wife or whoever. We're just saying that there's still something that we can do to have, and we say, the Montessori moment is the moment in which we're there totally together and experiencing the joy of living, and there's still some joy to living with the person that's experiencing the difficulty.
Yeah, oh, definitely. My mom's been in end stages now for 4 years, and we just did a little music therapy with her. A friend of mine is going through Naomi Files validation training and asked if she could kind of use her for her study. And I said, sure. And, I've shown the little video clips to friends, and they're like, oh, my gosh, she just pops up. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And everyone, I mean, it just puts a smile on everyone's face. So if people can realize, you know, those small little things, you know, in my opinion, and some may argue with me, are so much more powerful and heartfelt than a lot of the big things that we typically look for. And when you can appreciate those little things, the glint in the eye, the giggle, the smile, the word, the song, the touch, I mean, those melt your heart.
It's right.
It's true.
That's right.
And just make such a connection. The other thing I thought comical, too, when I asked you about the positive dementia, it's like, well, bingo, there we go, just kind of with our negative mode. Well, if you're saying positive, there must be negative. And, you know, what you were saying, Karen, is, you know, it's harder than we think. And there I fell right into the trap of old ways and old thinking. And so, yeah, and you'd think I would know better, but, you know, we all do it. And it's one of those things, I think, that we have to teach people not to be ashamed about it, but to move on and just to try to ingrain into ourselves of, oh, I do have to watch for that. And move forward.
Yeah, you're right, and it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah. We found that out too. We still have to work. We still work at it every day.
I can believe that. Now, what types of care partners would benefit from this approach? And Karen, I'll throw this one out to you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Well, we have found through our training and the seminars and the talks we give that the Montessori Method for dementia care works very well with medical staff, and we've trained lots of medical staff as well as frontline caregivers and therapists of all sorts, art therapy, music therapy, occupational therapy, of course, physical therapy, all those types of therapists we've trained. And then, and most importantly, the friends and family caregiver, the people who do the work every day, are unsung heroes, and those people most especially. So we have trained just about everybody who comes in contact with people who have dementia, and we found that each one of those groups finds something valuable that they can use in their caregiving work, and that's one of the reasons that this application has been so successful over the years.
And Karen told me originally before we started to get involved with compiling this information in the book form that she saw an individual in a large bookstore rifling, I think is the term, isn't it, through a number of books on the topic of dementia. And she said, and the woman, what she was looking for was an answer for how she could be, how she herself could be dealing with this situation. And Karen said, I want to give that person who's looking for the answer just a little comfort, a little understanding that there is a way to be, and that's a way to understand how you can be, your own behavior can be dealing with this in a way that's comforting. And we've had a number of comments from individuals who have had this book in their hands. My own brother, who's caring for his wife, and he is the sole caregiver. She doesn't have dementia, mind you, but she is in the state of being an invalid, and he is the sole caregiver. And my own brother, who does not give compliments lightly, said to me, Tom, this book should be in everyone's hands because it validates the role of what I'm about. And when your own brother tells you that, you think, well, thanks, that's good. So this has other applications too, not just in dementia, but caring for an individual. When a person feels like you just patted them on the back by saying the work you're doing is important, not just for your loved one, but it's important for the whole world. And Karen and I say this, if mankind has some trajectory or a path of evolving we came out of the caves. That was an important step for us to do. And now the major thing that we have to learn as human beings is how to really do this correctly and how to be caregivers for everyone, because once we learn this, that'll mean that we can all survive in a much more appropriate manner as far as helping each other. So
very true. Very, very true. And like you said, when you get a compliment from a family member, because even though you're the professional and everyone else believes what you say, family just doesn't, and I hear that all the time from people.
That's right.
Especially, in the medical field, they're like, I'm a nurse. I get this. This is my job, or I'm a social worker.
Right.
But in the ranks of the family, I am nobody.
That's right.
That's right.
I know nothing. I revert back to my birth role,
right.
and that's how I'm seen in those dynamics. So, and I think the other thing that's really important about what you said is that so many people don't see themselves as a caregiver or a care partner or a carer, however you want to use the phrase. And I think they don't because they don't feel comfortable with it. They don't really know what it entails.
Right.
And this has such a positive spin because it's all about engagement and it's all about building relationship.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, we have viewed caregiving as this crisis state. And really, it's this natural state, one that I always say that started the moment we were conceived.
Yeah.
And people will argue that, and I'll say, how many tummies have you talked to and how many bellies have you patted? There's a relationship that starts before the womb, and it's all about those nonverbals and our energy and our excitement about engaging one another. And that never ends throughout our life. And many would argue even after that we can still have these relationships. So it's getting people to shift back to the power of their relationships and not losing them because of an illness or because of some stage of life or a job loss, or the list can go on and on and on, with that. But to say this relationship is important, and at its core, I can never lose it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Well, can you share with us what surprised you most about your work in the field of dementia? And Tom, I'll throw this one out to you.
Thank you, Lori. That is a great question, but as I already might have stated, but I'm going to state it again, that people with dementia still have something to give to each and every one of us and to the world. There's a story that's contained in all of our existences as human beings, and that story can be accessed, and we can gain that information from a person if we know how to take certain steps to get it. And I'm going to cut to the chase and say that Karen and I are all about gathering stories, and everyone has a story. And what we have done, this is amazing because you'd say, well, they're in a locked dementia unit. What do they have to offer the world? Well, Karen and I have been the torch carriers, and we've gained little snippets of a person's story as far as who they were, what they did. And we've shared this information with other people who might be in a situation in which they're no longer accessing the public. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that process of sharing stories. So one person with dementia, if we carry that story to another person with dementia, and we make it so that other person can read a poem that was written in another place, then all of a sudden we become like telephone lines, and we're having people communicate. So can people communicate with each other when they have dementia? Well, Karen and I have found certainly they can. we've told some stories that have been, or we've written stories and compiled them, not long, mind you, but short stories that a person with dementia has given to us, and we've taken it to another person, and they've read that story in a group reading. We have one story called The Best Gift, and I think that's in our book, You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello. And that story has been shared with other individuals who are suffering from memory loss, and they've read that story by a person who gave it to us and as a present. So what am I finding out here? I'm finding out that I don't know anything about how can we have keep the lines of communication open for a longer period of time. Does a person who is experiencing memory loss still have something to tell me as far as can I learn something from them and their life experience? Well, I'm here to tell you I have been squared, as they say, by a person with very serious dementia because they looked at me and said, "Oh, you learned something now, didn't you, young fella?" Or "Au contraire," you know? And I'm standing there thinking, you're not supposed to be teaching me something. I'm here to help you, you know. But the point is, no, that's not the way it is. And that is a huge understanding. And that's where the do with instead of do for, we start someplace and we never know where it's going to take us, but what we want to do is begin the journey. And a person with dementia is still on their own journey, and when they tell you what their journey is, you would be so surprised to find out that they just might tell you something, a piece of wisdom or a piece of information that you need to hear. As the smart guy that can navigate everything in society without any problems, but, you know, we all have some memory issues. But the point here I'm making is there's so much we can learn from each other, and I never thought that was going to be there. I thought it was going to be, I'm going to do this, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to get it. No, they're going to help me, they're going to show me, we're all in this thing together. It's just going to be different degrees of understanding. And so even when you think about it, when you think about how difficult it is sometimes to keep that ball up in the air when, you know, half the group are falling asleep, but then you understand that's something you need to learn. I need to learn that. We even came up with an idea of, okay, so you want to play a trivia game, and we designed a trivia game because we knew they were playing trivia games, and we saw, well, when a person would play the traditional trivia game, there were a number of people who could keep up, and there were a number of people who could not. So what Karen and I did is we based the trivia game on the fact that if the third answer in a trivia question was always the same, right, it was always right. The third, it was always right. So we're saying procedurally, we're gonna set this thing up so that everybody is going to begin to understand. I'm going to name three things, but the third one is going to be successful. It's going to be the right answer. Everybody in the group gets the right answer. They get the pattern. They can learn patterns, and it's astounding, you know. Because so I'm learning things of this nature. Is that a big deal in the world of Wall Street? Maybe not. But even.
But in terms of life, it is, because it's about empowering individuals. Yes. And by structuring it different, by empowering them to build their confidence, allows them to want to engage with us instead of thinking, I just can't get this. That's huge.
Yes.
You got it.
That's right.
Yep.
We all like to be successful.
Mhm.
Never changes.
Definitely. No, never changes. Never changes. One of the things, you know, like I said, I love these guideposts that you have in here, and I'm going to read a couple other ones, if you don't mind, to people.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think they're relevant to what we've been talking about. One says, we've met many different kinds of people living with dementia, and all of them have one thing in common, that there's not a phony in the bunch. I love that. They are so authentic. You know, and sometimes people get upset a little too authentic because they don't have their filters, the political filters.
Right.
That's right.
But, there's a couple of groups on Facebook that, through social media where people have connected all over the world, Memory People and Forget-Me-Nots, and I'm sure there's lots of others out there as well. But Memory People, for example, had a little convention last year. And out of, thousands of them, there was about 40, I think, that met in New York. And the one thing that came out, one after another, was they couldn't believe how powerful it was to meet one another because they felt so connected.
Yes.
And I said, well, that's because you're not talking about the weather. You're having real, honest conversations about deep personal things. And
right.
and that just makes it a more rich relationship. And again, we've forgotten the importance of being authentic and allowing others to be who they are, but instead we like to judge and categorize and put them in a box.
That's right.
And so to me, that's one of the gifts, again, wrapped in dementia, is to be more judgmental, live with a lot more gratitude and appreciation, and be much more flexible. And, when you can do that, or for me anyways, man, I don't have near the stress in my life I used to.
No.
Bingo. That's it.
Yep. That's one of the life lessons that we've learned, too.
Yeah.
Yep. And the other guidepost that I like was you have people living with dementia have so much to teach us, so much to share with us, the wisdom, the joy, the heartache, the fortitude, which is very, very true. I cannot believe the lessons I have learned not only from my mom on her 30-year journey and those that she's still teaching me in her end stages, which has been 4 years, but the connections I've made with others, the relationships and the people that I've met on this journey have allowed me to be more authentic, and they're more authentic because you don't have time for the crap in the world. You need to be honest and have those conversations, and they're just it's really been a blessing to build a community that understands and accepts.
Good.
It's really a neat place to be able to be. Is there, Karen, one story in the book that just stands out for you that you'd like to share as an example with people?
Oh boy, there's
all
so many. Tom is prompting me to say Joe. I will tell the story of Joe. Joe was a 94-year-old farmer we met in a very rural part of the Midwest, and he had spent his entire life on this one farm, and he grew up in the Depression, and he told us the story of how he was a very bright student, and he could have gone to college, but he didn't want to ask his dad and grandpa they'd have to hire somebody to take his place, and he didn't think that would be fair to them. So he stayed on the farm, and then he came up with this formula about how he was going to buy his farm, and everybody thought he was crazy because it was the middle of the Depression, and what Joe taught us was that he just lived on the money he made selling his eggs and his milk, and all the money he made when he sold his hogs, he saved. And before too long, in about 10 years' time, he was able to buy his farm, 80-acre farm, outright. And the reason that story resonates so much with us is that it demonstrated the grit and the fortitude of our parents and grandparents, and also the Midwest, how strong the people are that have worked this land. And then also the idea of being disciplined, that kind of discipline to save that hog money for a future investment. And Tom and I laugh and say, no, we got to get us some hog money so we can save it. And the thing about Joe was he was such a brilliant man and such a wise man. And of course, he did have dementia, and he would kind of remember us sometimes or not, but he knew he liked us because he knew that we liked to listen to his stories. So Joe is kind of representative of this generation who taught us the importance of, grit and fortitude and not giving up. And I think that's one of the great life lessons that we learn. And just very quickly, I'll say to you, Lori, I told Joe's story on Chicago Public Radio. I wrote a story about him, and we put it on the air. And we told Joe that. We said, Joe, your story was on the radio in Chicago, and hundreds of thousands of people heard about how you saved your hog money. And all he could say was, well, my land.
Oh, how cute is that?
So when Tom talks about us taking these little snapshots, vignettes of someone's life and taking it and sharing it to the larger world, we do that. We take it from long-term care home to adult day center to a talk for the Alzheimer's Association, but we also put it out on the radio. So our point is that people who have dementia still have so much to share, not only with us but with the world.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that when we got into this work, we had no idea that would be a big component of our work, is sharing these stories that these people share with us.
Well, the stories are so powerful, and to me,
Thank you.
Stories are what people remember, and they, they can visualize themselves in that situation, and it just makes it real. It's not statistic. It's not methodology. It's not clinical. It's personal, real stuff. That's happened. And again, I think it's just so empowering. Tom, I'm going to ask you, you have all these little activities in here, which I absolutely adore, like the hubcap polishing exercise, or the pennant sorting game, or the tackle box game. Can you tell people about some of these games and why you put them in there and how they've been working for people?
Well, thanks, Lori. Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you a little bit about the tackle box exercise. One of the great things about Montessori as an approach is they present an activity as a self-contained activity. Everything you need to do something in the Montessori world can be on a tray, and that allows the individual, to the student, the child, to have everything they need to proceed with the learning exercise. Well, I thought, golly, could you think of an adult entity other than like a tackle box? Because when you go fishing, everything's in that tackle box. That's gonna mean whether or not you got your bait, or you have your hooks, or you have your lures, or whatever. And so I thought, well, why shouldn't a person with memory loss or dementia, maybe this would benefit that person to take a look inside of a tackle box, because there's that element of curiosity, what's in the tackle box. So I thought I'd put it together based on the Montessori approach, and there's some objects in there. We try to do the matching lures and no hooks. Now that's the first principle. How can I show a person a lure without hooks? Well, what I decided is that I could put on little spinner blades and take the hooks off and just put on dangling spinner blades. Mm-hmm. And that would represent something dangling off of the lure, so it's going to be completely not dangerous. And so what I did is I put a number of objects inside of the tackle box, and then I proceeded. I also took pictures, because that's a part of the extension in the Montessori world. I took matching pictures of fish and fishermen. And I put a whole bunch of cards in there that we could look at those pictures, and they were all laminated. So essentially I'm building an exercise that's self-contained. So here I have a tackle box that's got a number of different objects in it that are going to be safe to handle and manipulate. And we field tested it, and I can't tell you straight out of the box. And first I thought it would be just for men. And then I was writing to a number of professional fishermen saying, would you like to contribute something? Because I was looking for a cheap contribution. Do you have any lures you'd like to send me? And then I got a number of responses from women. And they'd say, hey, women are fisher women too. It's not just fishermen. So this particular exercise is not gender specific, but here's the rub of it. Okay, I'm starting out with the concept that I'm going to have all these objects inside of a tackle box. Now, what happened and what happens is we're all about, we said, stories. Well, the reminiscence that comes out of a person with dementia's background who was involved in fishing, which is for a generation more than another, I'd say, it's like we're off to the races. And here's the second thing that happens. Okay, so I'm finding out who was a fisherman in here, because these people are jumping right in there and they want to get into all of the objects, and they start talking about their stories and fishing experiences. But here's the phenomenon that I did not expect. Every time we come back to a place or a facility where there are those fishermen, they want to talk about fishing with me. And they don't remember me. They don't remember the exercise. But I can initiate a conversation, and I'll say, hey, Jim, how about bluegills? What did you think of those bluegills? And, oh, my gosh, it's like, wow, let's talk fishing. But how would I know that if I didn't start somewhere? How would I know that Jim was an avid fisherman who wanted to he really held on to that memory if I didn't start with muscle memory, procedurally reconstituting his memory through an object that would put something in his hands that would bring up the whole fishing experience? But what we have found out is there are a lot of things like that. We've done that with cooking. We've done that with a person who was a great baker, and we'd say herbs. We've used spices and whatnot. And all of it was a step to initiate this engagement that has been, I can't tell you, but I was designing specific activities that would get somebody to reminisce. And it wasn't even as much about the activity itself, because we tell people, plan it, and then when somebody starts to open up in another direction, then go with them. So it's not about the activity now. That's only our starting point. If a person wants to keep talking about fishing, but if somebody looks at my fishing exercise and looks at that fish picture and says, oh man, I love to eat trout, and then we start talking about eating fish. But that's great. That's where we want to go. So anyway, that's something when I was thinking, how can I get some, as far as those pennants were concerned, I'll tell you something funny about pennants. They were baseball pennants from the National and American League. We've had conversations about that. They're very small pennants, but we were able to create a key in which we could have a group leader that would know who was in the National League, who was in the American League, what teams that is. But here's the weird thing about woolen pennants. They have smelled the same since for the last 60 years. You smell a woolen pennant, and people will actually smell it. Yeah. I don't know. There you go. So where was that written in some book about things to do with people with dementia? It's not. So I was very lucky that the hubcap thing was a freaky deal that I knew. I knew from being back in the day when we would take chrome polish and shine the chrome on a car. Now they're not selling a lot of that chrome polish because it's all plastic. But I took in hubcaps that I found in a junkyard and started to engage a person who liked old cars. Yeah, it was non-toxic polish. Karen always tells me to tell people that because, it's all about Montessori world. They polish. Everything is safe to touch. But the hubcap thing was so fantastic because this person, through the repetition of polishing a hubcap, started to tell me stories about Vietnam and their experience in the war. And I thought, see, so I wanted to polish hubcaps and talk about old cars, but that's not what that person wanted to talk about.
Sure.
Once that person started polishing, then he came up with war stories, and I thought, duh, you know, inspection, polishing your boots, polishing your brass, of course, you know.
Yeah. Oh, well, wonderful. Well, I need to get our next guest on here, but time has just flown by. You guys are
Lori, you've been great.
Fascinating work. It's been just a privilege and an honor,
Lori,
and an honor
you've been great.
to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Karen, how do people get a hold of you? What would you like them to have for contact information for you?
Oh, thanks, Lori. Well, first of all, you can buy our book, You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. And if you're in Chicago, at Women and Children's First Bookstore is selling it. So there's lots of places to buy the book. And then as far as contacting us, our website is Brenner Pathways, all one word, and it's plural, pathways, .org. And they can write us there. There's a link there where they can email us. And we'd love to hear from people. And Lori, again, thank you so much for this great opportunity.
And it's been an honor, Lori. Yes. Lori, it's been an honor because, you meet a lot of people on this journey, but you definitely get it. So we're privileged. We're privileged.
It's so fun connecting with everyone, and I hope to be able to meet you guys in person. It'd be fun to share a stage with you somewhere, or
we'd love
do another radio show together. Keep us posted, but I highly encourage people. This book is absolutely wonderful. It's an easy read. It's a great resource. I think it will help so many people around the world, called You Say Goodbye, We Say Hello. So thank you so much for being with us today, Tom and Karen. Enjoy your weekend, okay?
You too, Lori.
Thank you.
God bless, Lori. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Before I pull our next guest in, I am just going to highlight a couple of things going on here. Alzheimer's Disease International, we had some problems in terms of scheduling their show, or rescheduling, I should say, because we had some difficulties when they were in Taipei for the conference. We're tentatively looking at getting that show rescheduled for the 17th, and I will keep you updated. I also wanted to highlight just some really, I think, cool things that are on Alzheimer's Speaks blog this week. One is Max Wallach, who is a 16-year-old going to Boston University, whose grandma had the disease, and there's just a beautiful article about him, and he is on this mission to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. He also has a company called Puzzles to Remember, where he gets puzzles and he sends them out to nursing homes. He sent them to My Memory Cafe, and the people just love them because they're big piece puzzles, easy to do. So he sent them and I know our participants are really loving this activity. So that might be an article of interest. There's also a video that I just put on the other day from Keith Oliver, and he is a man living with early onset, and he really talks about what it's like, and it will just be a fantastic tool. I think it's about 8 minutes long, but you are going to find so much great information in there. I don't care if you're a professional or a family member or just somebody who wants to learn more. Wonderful, wonderful video. And then Music First with Choral Health. There's an article there. I had talked about that a little bit earlier, where they have an application that you can get for $4.99 a month, and they have thousands of pieces of music specific to help people with dementia. That would be something, again, I think that is great because, if you can have it on your phone and it can help with agitation or eating or sleeping, there's just so many different things music can do and the power behind it. I think that's an article worth reading. And then Norms McNamara, our friend over in the UK, Mr. Powerhouse, changing the world on making things dementia-friendly. Norms, there's an article that lists a bunch of his videos there, and I know that people are always looking on, where can they get more information. There's also an article on disability benefits, which I know is just a real sore spot for people on how do I process, how do I apply, what does it take to do this. And then last, I just want to ask for your prayers. I had mentioned to our audience before, in St. Paul, Minnesota, there's a contest to become dementia-friendly, or a contest for $1 million idea, and I submitted a proposal to become dementia-friendly. And they're going to be picking the semifinalists and announcing that on May 9th. And so send your prayers and good juju our way that we end up being one of those finalists. We would love to be the first city in the U.S. to become dementia-friendly. So, again, that would just be fantastic. And one other thing I wanted to mention. I just received some books in the mail from Trevor Mumby, and they just look so interesting. And his books are about conducting well-being with dementia in the family, coaching for carers, a fresh look. But he is somebody that I also am looking at getting on the radio show, filled with great information. So with that, let me introduce our next guest that we're so privileged to have with us today. Ellen Gerst is a grief and relationship coach. She's an author and a workshop leader. She uses a combination of her personal experience as a young widow and her professional expertise, and assists clients and readers to look at challenging life circumstances from a different perspective. In doing this, she enables them to move gracefully towards a renewal of life and of love. Ellen has written on a myriad of topics, and they're all underlying themes of healthy relationships. You can visit. She has like a little library on her website. And if you go there, you'll get a full list of subjects that include coping with grief and caregiving, spirituality, the development of positive thought, which, Tom and Karen were just talking about, love, dating, and relationships. And so today, our topic with Ellen is going to be about her new book that's just out, Why Am I So Angry at My Parents? And it's all about understanding the grief that a caregiver has. So welcome, Ellen. How are you doing today?
Good. I think I'll make one little correction. That's not the name of my book.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, why don't you go ahead and correct me on that? What's the name of the book?
It's Understanding Dementia and Caregiving for Your Aging Parents from A to Z.
Oh, okay.
I like to write in these short, concise messages because people are so busy, they don't have a lot of time, they just want some quick information that they can digest later on. So I try to keep it simple in an A to Z format.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I apologize for that, and I'm glad we got that squared away. So Ellen and I have kind of known each other through social media for a while now, and so it's kind of exciting to have you on board with us here on the radio show and to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. Can you tell us before we start, have you been personally touched with a family member or friend with dementia?
Yes, my mom is 93 years old. She's probably in the later mid stage. She still recognizes people. She lives in assisted living, but she needs help with the daily tasks, showering and choosing the clothes, but she can participate in activities and the like. So it's been I just moved her in there from independent living in November, and it's been absolutely wonderful.
Okay, great. Well, that's just a gift in and of itself that you feel comfortable where she's at, because that's a big worry that families have many times, is that whole placement issue. But can you tell us how you feel understanding the process of grief can help a care partner when they're dealing with dementia?
Sure. Well, I think in general, society doesn't like to deal with death and grief and loss. We rather brush it under the rug because, who wants to look at that? And it's only until you're confronted with the loss of a person that you're thrown into this mix, and you have to it's learn as you go. And I think that people don't realize when they're confronted with their parent's illness that they're having some of their emotional reactions are a grief response, because they haven't been taught that, so it's understandable. And grief's a funny thing. No one experiences it the same, but there's some universal truths about it. So that's what I wanted to just discuss, just to get your listeners some idea of what grief is all about.
Okay.
I don't know if people have heard that when you're mourning, it's called going on a journey. It's the grief journey. But that's really true for everything in life. Life is a journey. And when you have a crisis or a loss, and losses come in all different sizes, but, a little disappointment, that's a loss too. And we need to learn how to handle that. So we're stopped in our tracks when a loss confronts us. And there are various paths you can take. And there's the hard way, and I won't say it's the easy way, but if you understand something about grief and what you're experiencing, then it can be a little bit easier on you. So I think when you finally learn that your parents have a dementia or an Alzheimer's diagnosis, that is the start. You're starting on your pre-journey. I'm sure, are you familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on dying? Yeah. So she says that there are 5 steps to the grief journey: denial and isolation, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I think people get stuck in this, and I don't think that they're written in stone, and you don't necessarily have to feel them all, or they don't have to be in that order. You can go back and forth. But I think that's a framework, and you can say, oh, that's how I'm feeling. I'm not crazy. Other people have felt that way. So I think that's just a good thing as a basis to keep in mind.
Well, and I like that you mentioned that there's not a right or wrong way to grieve. There are definite stages and stuff, but I do believe, and I'm not a researcher, but I do believe people ebb and flow through those, just like they ebb and flow through stages of dementia. It's not cut and dry. Somebody can be very lucid one moment and not so much the next, and 3 weeks later that lucidity might come back again, just for a short period of time, and people are shocked. And it ebbs and it flows, and we have to learn to be able to be, I think, flexible with the process instead of trying to control it. Can you give us maybe a little bit of an outline, or maybe even define? And this might sound kind of silly, but define what you see grief as.
I do. I will, but I just want to comment on one thing you said, because I had a perfect example of that happen to me this week with my mother, with the ebb and the flow. One of my sisters and brother-in-law came out to visit my mom, and they've been married for over 40 years. My mother's been to their house. They live in New York, many, many times. And they were leaving. They left, at the beginning of the week. And the next day, my mother says to me, "Who is that man, that your sister was with?" And my jaw just dropped to the floor that she didn't know who that was. Of course, I didn't let her say that. I just said, "Oh, that's her husband." And she said, "Oh, is that her first husband? When did she marry him? And where they live?" It was like that memory was completely erased from her mind. And that's the first time that has happened with her, about not knowing a family member. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about it, over the week, she asked me many times. We went over the same story, over and over again. And she seems to have leveled off, because now she's made a new story in her mind that she either she recalls it or she now has it in her mind that these two are married and that's his name, and it was very, very interesting. And I have a clinical psychologist come in once a week to work with her to do memory games, and I asked her about that, and she said it could have been overstimulation because they spent so much time with her that it got it out of her routine a little bit, and it might have been too much for her. And then when she went back into her regular pattern, she seems to have stabilized. So that sometimes two steps forward, two steps backwards and one step forward.
Yep, exactly. So why don't we have you kind of define grief and how you see it show up in people?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think. Let me draw you a picture. I think grief is this big, when you're confronted with loss, it's this big brick wall, and it's so tall. It goes up to the sky. It goes out to the sides. You cannot get over it. You cannot go around it. The only way is to go through it, and it's painful to go through it, but surprisingly enough, there's a lot of joy that you encounter along the way. So another way to look at this situation is that if you I like to make this statement, and I want to make sure that people don't take it the wrong way, but every event in life is neutral. It's the individual that's going to color this event with an emotion. So my mother is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I can say that's a good thing or a bad thing. Now, obviously, it's not as black and white as that. But in order to make proper decisions for her, I need to come to neutral about that event. So what that means is that when I found this out, and it was a long time in coming, my emotions swung like a pendulum, high to low, and I was holding on for dear life until I figured out, why is my mother acting this way? I can't understand it. She was always independent, and I would get angry at her, which, is one of those grief responses, and then I would deny, well, no, nothing's going on. So you feel all those emotions, and that's how you're processing them. But I'm sure you've seen a pendulum, those little balls that you pull one back and they go back and forth. So Lori,
yep.
What happens? What happens eventually to those balls with the pendulum after it finishes swinging back and forth? What happens?
Well, they stay still after they stop. Eventually
they come to neutral. So that's when you are done processing your emotions, and you can jump off that that roller coaster. And then that's when you can make good decisions. And it's the same. That's how you process grief. Of course you feel your emotions. So that's why I'm saying I want people don't to take it the wrong way. Of course you feel horrible about this situation, and it's not not in anybody's imagination is it a good thing. But you come to neutral and you say, well, let me see if there is anything good from this. Just like your last guest said. And I think one of the good things that you can take from it is, let's say you had an acrimonious relationship with your parents. Well, when everything is stripped away from a person's life, the only thing that's left is love. Now, it's boring, abuse, and extraneous things. But mostly you have love left, and it's your relationships that count. So when you can take away all those things that your parents said to you when you were young, that that you kept harboring in your brain, all those buttons they can push, all that's gone, and you can just have this simple, peaceful relationship with them. I know when I go to visit my mother now, and I had a good relationship with her, throughout the years, but I know that no matter what stress I am feeling work-wise or anything else in my life, when the time that I spend with her is stress-free because everything is so simple. I can just be with her. The other day, I went over for a couple of hours, and I laid on her bed and read my book, and she sat in her easy chair and looked at her book. And it was, she got up and she walked by walked by to go to the bathroom and she tickled the bottom of my feet. It was just such a simple, peaceful couple of hours to spend with her, and the rest of the world could go away. And that's just changing your perspective on seeing the good things even in the bad. And that's how people get through grief, because you learn so much about yourself. Grief is just an introspective journey to learn about yourself and to figure out how you're going to confront the world. And when you've had a terrible loss, life becomes more precious, and you know the only thing that counts is love. So as painful as loss is, if you use it properly, you can use those lessons for the rest of your life and apply them to whatever other relationships you'll have, and in your professional life. It gets you down to your core.
Well, and I totally agree with you. You have to feel the pain to move through it, and so many people want to mask it through, denial, or it could be drugs or alcohol, or whatever. But you have to process it, and I love that you say that the emotions are really neutral. It's just what we choose to do with them. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are, and we have to process them and then move forward. And once we embrace that, if you can train yourself to do that, it's so much easier and so much more or less stressful than carrying that heavy baggage of, I should be dealing with this, but I don't wanna.
That's what I said. You can do it the hard way, or you can do it the less hard way.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about some practicalities and some lessons of grief that might be able to help our audience work with, if it's parents or friends that have dementia. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I think there's a lot of anger going on. Sometimes the parent's angry, sometimes you're angry, but I think you need to really look below the surface of anger, because if you can accept that there are only two emotions that people have, they either have love, they either see life through love, or they see life through the eyes of fear. And anger is a fear-based reaction. If you just take a step back and you say, well, why am I angry? So until you know what's going on, and your parents are acting out of character, and they're doing weird things, and you're almost like a child. You're getting angry at them. Why don't you know better? How could you do this? And what are you afraid of? Well, in the back of your mind, you're saying, well, I'm afraid there's something really drastically wrong here. And it comes out as anger. Mm-hmm. The other thing is when you realize that your parents have, dementia, and you're angry also, and you say, well, you're afraid of, well, if they have this gene, does that mean that I'm going to have it too? And then you get worried about that. And and if your parents are going to, are dying, well, that's going to make you an orphan, and that means you're next up. Well, that's another fear. Mm-hmm. If you're at the beginning stages and they can't live by themselves and you need to become a caregiver, well, you're probably, you have mixed emotions about this, because you love your parents, you want to take care of them, but hey, we're of the baby boomer age and we worked hard and we're getting ready to retire and enjoy our lives, and all of a sudden I have to take care of my parent and that's going to change my lifestyle. Well, it's natural to be angry about that, and people beat themselves up for feeling that way, but that's a natural emotion. So you have to process that and release them.
Yeah, well, because it's about change, and none of us at our core like change, because change is scary. Even me. I typically tell people I love change, and but there's moments where you get that little panic of, what's it really going to be like, And so it's that nervousness of not having control that it's drilled into us. As a society, we're supposed to be in control all the time, and caregiving you can't always control.
Well, I think if you think you're in control any of the time, you just have to, sometimes you just have to let go. And the thing about change is that even if something is going to change your life for the better, that still means upheaval. Let's say you win this, this wonderful contest. Well, that's probably going to change your life for the better, but you're going to have to make adjustments in your life, and any sort of change, we're afraid of, and because it gets us out of our routine that we're used to doing, and we have to look at life in new ways. And then if if this changes, well, then I have to go back and change these other things, and it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are afraid of change. One of the other changes, and something else you can be angry about, but if you look below, it's really a fear, is if your parents don't have the funds to go into a caregiving home or whatever they need, well, you say, well, how am I going to have the funds enough to pay for it, and how is that going to infringe upon my life? So there's lots of anger or fear really to be worked out.
Well, and then there's the case where the family has the money, but they don't want mom and dad spending it because they were hoping that was going to be their inheritance. Right. So you have all different types of dynamics that can be happening at multiple levels within the family too, plus all the outside agencies. And we don't teach people how to care for themselves or for others. I mean, it's just kind of this osmosis thing, but we really don't talk about it openly as a society in terms of what does it take, because I believe there's kind of a basic skill set, and a lot of what you're talking about would be wonderful if people had that basic skill set to be able to remove a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and help them move forward. And again, not that they can't, that they're able to ignore what they're feeling, but to teach them how to process it. I think it's sad that we don't value that enough to teach that.
I know. I mean, I work with a lot of widows, and they flounder so much. I mean, I floundered. I was widowed 18 years ago, and there was, I was 39 years old, and nobody knew what to do with a young widow back then. Now there's a lot more support, but I had to figure it out by myself because nobody told me. Nobody validated my feelings and said, it's okay to feel this way. Everybody feels this way, and that's why that's what I said at the beginning. Society is failing us by not teaching these things.
Yeah,
I think it's very sad.
It is sad, and I think the more we talk about it, hopefully the more that will change. And, I think so much of the time we focus on teaching this to the adults, and the adults don't want to, appear vulnerable to their kids. Well, it's life. This isn't a stage. This is just something that's continuous that happens in our life and can be applied on many levels. And so we shouldn't be ashamed if we're struggling with giving care or being cared for. But we do need to, work our way through it. And then, I would really love to see people, and that's one of the reasons I started Alzheimer's Speaks, was to have this honest conversation of not feeling embarrassed, because when people talk about their emotions honestly, I mean, yeah, there might be somebody who's uncomfortable, but even if they're uncomfortable, you've touched them in a spot that they needed to go, that they needed to value and realize, because they're probably stuffing stuff. And, I have seen so many people later on go, that was strange for me to hear, but I really processed it because part of it, and I've had people say this multiple times, part of it is that they're not used to people being honest. And I just thought, what a sad comment. They're not used to people really being honest about what they're feeling and how it's affecting them to be able to work through that. And, to me, that's just it's an awful state that we're in, and it's much more difficult. It makes it much more difficult for everyone to process if we can't truly be authentic. And again, you can't take it out on somebody and be evil or get physical or anything like that. But to be able to validate that you have emotions and that they're there, allows you, like you said, to process through them.
Right,
so,
and I think just as a society in general, people don't like to appear vulnerable. I mean, I help people with dating. And that's why I say everything in life is about grief and relationships, because life is a series of losses and rebirths, and the only thing that counts is your relationships. So when people date at an older age, if they've lost a spouse, they turn back into teenagers, and they're afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of being vulnerable. So instead of allowing themselves to feel their emotions and maybe get hurt, they will reject first, just to protect themselves from not having another loss. I think what you said about being uncomfortable, when people hear these things, I think it's good to be uncomfortable, because we tend to be complacent. We go along and we do our things by rote, and we don't want to move out of our pathway. And when you're uncomfortable, you grow. I love this quote and my website is called Lost and Found. And it's based on a quote from like the 15th century. It said, "I'd rather be lost than found." And what I mean by that is, when you're found and things are going along well, as I said, you become complacent. Now, I don't want to really be very lost, but I want to be a little lost, so that urges me on to keep exploring, to keep learning. My husband gets mad at me. He says, "Well, you're always changing your mind." Well, I don't want to be stuck in something. If I get new information, then I have to go back and reprocess my thoughts, and that may result in me seeing things from a different perspective. I'm not talking about my base, morals and values, that remain the same, but the way I look at things should always be in flux. That's when you say couples need to grow together. Well, that's what growing is. It's taking in new information and assimilating it, and then seeing which path you want to go on.
I like that explanation, because it is life to me is a journey, and it's one of constant learning. And so if you keep it if you keep that mindset that you're never ever going to have all the right answers, you're going to have the right answer, the best answer for that particular moment with the knowledge you have and the experiences that you have, but the next moment's going to be a little different. And so it doesn't have to be exactly the same. And I think people get so stuck thinking it has to be exactly the same. And it's so freeing. And again, it's so, you don't judge yourself as much. You don't judge others as much. You are, it allows you to look through a whole different lens that, to me, has brought me just a ton of calm. I mean, my friends joke that I'm the calm one, because it takes a lot to get me rattled, and I think it's because I'm always trying to look at, even if I disagree with what is happening around me, I always try to figure out what's causing that. Something caused that. Something triggered that, because people, I think, at heart are good. They're not going to do something bad, but something, their perspective, their experiences is drawing them to act in a certain way to make them feel safe.
Well, and that's why I said most of those responses are fear-based. If you look below the surface, greed is fear, jealousy is fear. When you act out, it's fear, because you just want to keep your place, and you're holding on for dear life, and you don't know how to do it. The other thing is that lots of let's say your parent, you've been angry at them, or you're not happy with how the situation has gone, and you start beating yourself up and feeling guilty about it. But maybe you didn't have a clear picture. So everything looks crystal clear when, in retrospect. Oh, I should have done that. I should have done this. But you can only make decisions with the best information in front of you. And and again, don't be stuck. If you get some good information, filter that in and make a new decision.
Yep. Yeah, very, very, very true. I think, when it comes to dementia, there's so many levels of grief, too, because it's kind of this, some people have described it as an ambiguous death because of the number of losses that go through. And I think there's, you can focus on the losses or you can focus on what's still present, too. Do you work with people on that aspect as well?
Yes, that's living in gratitude. Be grateful for what you have in the moment rather than bemoaning what you've lost. And sometimes it is, for example, what I said, you can have this great relationship with your parents that maybe you didn't have when you were younger because all that stuff is peeled away. And I think it helps you to become more patient. One of the things that people, go nuts with is they're talking to a patient, a family member who has dementia, and, they repeat the same story over and over and over again. It's like you're ready to pull out your hair. And one thing that you can do is, keep a straight face, and in your mind, just keep saying to yourself every time they say the same thing, this is the first time they have heard this information, and it's brand new to them. And if you can calm yourself with that, then every time they say it, you can just give the same answer over and over again, like it's the very first time, and that just takes away a lot of your anxiety. So I think
that's a great phrase because of what I found very interesting when people are giving care is that we make it about us. And so, when you're getting upset over, a reaction from them, you're making the care about you, and you're changing the environment, you're changing the attitude. But if you can say, hey, this is the first time they've heard it, now you're focused on them, and you're able to let it go. I have a tool called Your Memory Chip, which does the same thing, just a little bit different. But what I found was people are so focused. They got to do this and that and this and that and this and that. And I try to get people to focus on three simple things. Are they safe? Are they happy? And are they pain-free? Because that's really all that matters.
Right.
And then the focus goes...
Making, for my mother, it's making her comfortable, making her feel safe, and whatever you have to do to do those things, that is your task. For instance, when she was in independent living, a lot of paranoia comes with dementia. And she would, when things went missing, which of course she was hiding, she blamed, a specific person. This person is coming in when I'm not here and taking my things, old clothing, inconsequential things. So what I did was I installed a little camera that was attached to a computer, and it focused on the front door. And I would go through it with her. Every time she would say something was missing, I would go through it with her and show her all the pictures. It was by the second. So that nobody was coming in except her. When that didn't work because she insisted, they were coming in some other way, then I put a double lock on her door, and she was the only one that had the key. And that made her feel safe for many, many months until, she had another step down, and that didn't work either. So you just have to figure out new ways of looking at the situation and saying how. It doesn't matter if logically to you it's not happening. Like, why would this person want, broken coffee cup? Well, it doesn't matter. They have lost their ability to reason and to look at it logically. They have made something is missing, and they have made a story to fit into why it's missing. Because otherwise, they would have to admit, even if they have the power to admit, that something must be wrong with them, and that's their fear. Because sometimes they're cognizant enough to know I don't remember this. There must be something really wrong with me. And like, I never use the word Alzheimer's with my mother. I just say, your memory's not as good as it used to be. I mean, why? It's like you were saying that, you have to stop thinking about yourself. What I might want to say, you have Alzheimer's and you have no memory, and this is why this is happening. Well, what good would that do? That would just frighten her. Mm-hmm. That would be for me to get it off my chest because I'm so aggravated about it. No, but for her, I'm not lying to her. I'm just not. I'm telling her the truth. I'm just not naming the truth. And she can accept. She knows that her memory is failing in some ways. I mean, she'll even say that. Oh, I can't remember a thing. So you really have to. You have to do what's best for them, not what's best for you.
Yeah, and the words we choose are very important. My mom got to the point where she would say, "Oh, I have Alzheimer's," and then she'd giggle like, "That's my excuse." Don't expect me to remember. And I mean, it was kind of a game, and so it was funny. She would remember that, but not, remember other things and stuff. But it was all about what she was comfortable with, and that, those paranoid states of mind can be very trying on everybody. But what we have to think about is, when we're paranoid or when we're scared, that's an awful feeling, and for them to be in that state and us not to be able to explain it in a logical fashion, then, we have to kind of put that investigative hat on, look for ways to be able to remove that. Like you said, logic or not, doesn't matter. It's about they have a right to feel safe and comfortable. And sometimes we just don't think about the core task at hand is really caring for a person, not just physically, but emotionally.
Right.
And really, I think the other struggle that I think children have a lot with their parents is losing that relationship, with their parents.
Right, but it's losing the relationship and switching roles because now you're the parent and they're the child, and that's a hard thing to get your mind against. Here are these parents who were independent and successful and someone to whom you could always go to for advice, and now that's your role. That they're so helpless, and that's a very difficult thing to see, and that's part of grieving. You're looking at your parents dying a little step at a time, and of course you're going to have all these different confusing emotions. And when you don't, that's my entire point, when you don't realize it's a grief response, then you don't know what to do with those emotions.
Yeah. Well, and we're all dying, one way or the other.
The moment we're born, we're all dying.
Yeah, but we look at it, and like I said with Tom and Karen, we look at this as a crisis state when we give care. And one of the things that I learned to reframe with my own mom was the gift of being able to see her be a child. That's an amazing. I mean, if you can switch your mindset and let go of something that you can't control, it's fascinating to see the interaction and the filters are gone, and the joy, the levels of joy and the levels of anger because the filters are gone. It's incredible. It's absolutely an incredible gift, and the repercussion of that gift with my mom was she taught me to play again, because as an adult we're not good at playing. Everything is serious, and some people are better at it than others, but she really taught me to play again and not take things so seriously. And that, again, removed a lot of stress in my life that I was carrying that I didn't need to carry.
Right. Well, I know that my mom was always very stoic. I mean, I was totally loved, cared for, had a great upbringing, but my family wasn't very demonstrative, so there's not a lot of hugging or, I love yous. And now, all she wants to do is give you a hug, and it really is an amazing transformation to see. Just going back, you're right, going back to that core before life got in the way that caused her to become stoic. She had to take care of her father and her mother, and she had a lot of responsibilities. So she was very strong. And now she doesn't have to be so strong because I make her feel safe. If she has a problem, she can call me. She lives 10 minutes away. I go there. I solve her problem. And you can see that you can visually see the anxiety go away because I say, well, I will take care of it.
Yeah. And what a beautiful thing that is. The other thing that I found, with my mom was because, and this took a while in the process because we had gone through the paranoid state, but then she got to, another stage where she didn't judge anything anymore. She was just accepting, and she wasn't fearful for the most part, and she was just very content. And I talk about it in I can't remember what I wrote, but one story about her just being the safest place in the world to go because she doesn't judge. She just loves me.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said. I look at going to visit her as an oasis of serenity. If you just get away, and I'm there, where she lives quite often. It's a small place. It only has 30 people, and I'm buddies with everybody because I'm like another resident there, and I so enjoy being with them all.
Well, and what a black and white scenario from you view it as an oasis, I do, to others going, do I literally, and you probably have had this happen too, people trying to give you permission to not have to go visit because they feel it's so painful.
Right.
And, because of the fear, because they don't know how to interact, they don't know what to do, and they go down this rabbit hole of, they're dying and it's the end. And my mom has been in her end stages for 4 years. The end stage, what does end stages mean? Not a whole lot,
Right.
It means we have to communicate differently, like any other stage in our life, We just have to communicate, but we still have to continue to live life and embrace it. What do you think in terms of counseling? Do you think counseling can really help a caregiver and or a parent that might have dementia or a person with dementia?
Well, the way I use counseling is that when I wanted to move my mother from independent living to assisted living, she, of course, was protesting. And instead of me being the bad guy, I took her to the psychologist, and, he gives her the tests and talks to her and whatever, and he comes back with a recommendation. I think this is a move you need to make, it's safer, whatever he said. And then every time she would bring it up, and I went to her regular doctor too, and every time she brought it up, I would say, it's not my decision. This is what your doctor and the psychologist are saying, and I have to follow the doctor's recommendations. So it lets you out of being the bad guy. I don't know how much counseling, how much discussion, true counseling would help. But what I didn't realize is that if the parent is on Medicare, that I can go to the therapist. If my parent goes first, I can go to the therapist as long as I talk about my issues with my parent. That's covered through her policy. So,
okay.
Yeah, I haven't gone, maybe I went, a couple of times just for hints on how to handle things and whatever, but that's a great thing. And then this psychologist recommended this company. I said I had a clinical psychologist coming to my mom's place once a week. It's called A Wiser Mind. And right now they're in Arizona and Colorado, but I'm sure there are other places like it, and they have clinical psychologists do home visits, and she did a legacy project with my mother, which we took out all the old pictures, and and I'm always there when she's there because I find it absolutely fascinating to listen to it. How much of my mother is still in her. The psychologist has the tools to draw the information out that maybe I don't. And she gave her, those normal tests that the neuropsychologist gives, and she failed them terribly. Mm-hmm. But those tests are not indicative of how much my mother has going on. She, you have to count, with 3 numbers, or she gives her 3 numbers to repeat back, 3, 6, 9. Mm-hmm. And my mother maybe can't repeat back the numbers, but she can tell her the relationship between the 3 and the 6 and the 9, that you're adding 3 on each one. So there's a lot more going on than those tests show. I'm saying, yes, you should get those tests, you should get a diagnosis, but just don't write them off just because it says, they can't remember a thing. There is much more going on inside. You just need the tools to know how to get to them.
Yeah, when my mom got formally diagnosed, it was probably, probably 20 years ago, I guess now, with Alzheimer's, and we had known, 10 years prior, and she knew there were issues, but when the test came back then, it was, she had Alzheimer's, and she had the mentality of a 3-year-old, don't let her out of your sight. And a lot of people, would have looked at that as just, stop. She can't do anything. And Mom was still able to do a ton of stuff. Her social skills were extremely good. And I personally believe she's still alive today and been hanging on, even though she's been in her end stages for years, because of the care she's getting at Volunteers of America and the engagement. The level of engagement is still there. And, if people have purpose, they have power. And when they don't, and this goes for all of us, not just someone with dementia, then we get depressed and withdrawn. And so,
when everybody's on their deathbed, are they going to be they're going to be saying, I made so much money, and I was, everybody lauded me as being, the best in my field. No, the only thing that's going to count are your relationships. And if you can learn that before you're on your deathbed, you're ahead of the game, because really, to love and be loved, that if you can make that your mantra to go through life, you're going to lead a much, much happier and successful life.
Oh, agree. Ellen, it's just been a joy to have you on the show. Can you tell people how to reach you?
Sure. You can visit my website, and it's the letter L, the letter N, Gerst, GERST.com. I thought I was being so cute when I said that, when I made my website, because if you say those letters out loud, it's Ellen, but people don't get it. So I need to spell it out. I have, as you said at the beginning, I have a library of all my books on there. You can also find them on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and the links are on my website. If people are grieving, have lost their parent, or know of anybody else, I also give coping with grief tips every day on Facebook, and you can also find that on my website. And
what's your Facebook page, Ellen? Is it just Ellen Gerst, or?
Oh, it's called Words of Comfort to Pave Your Journey of Loss, and that's all one word together.
Okay.
So, Facebook.com/. I am on the advisory board for a group called Hope for Widows, which helps widows of all ages go through their journey. And I just think those lessons learned from loss just serve you well for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And one more time, tell people the name of your book.
Understanding Dementia and Caregiving for Your Aging Parents from A to Z.
Wonderful.
So it's available as a Kindle book or as a soft cover.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much for being part of the show today. You just added a lot of value, and have a wonderful weekend, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Okay,
you too.
Bye now. In wrapping up the show, I just want to remind people of my little mantra. It's helped me, and maybe it'll help you, that life is about progress, not perfection. Again, if you are dealing with dementia and looking for resources, support groups, associations in your area, check out Alzheimer's Disease International at www.alz.co.uk, and you can find them on our website as well. I'd also highly encourage you to go ahead and check out Music First with Alzheimer's. That's the app that Coro Health has developed. And again, their website is www.coro and then health, HEALTH.com. I am just such a huge believer in the power of music. And again, they have music, and they also have choral faith as well. With that, our next show will be on the 6th, and I'm going to have Keith Bringle with us, and he did a video about his experience with his father who has dementia, and we were going to have author Lisa Hirsch with us, who wrote the book My Mother, My Hero. On the 13th, we're going to be blessed to have Linda McLean with us, who is another person who deals with gratitude, and Dr. Daniel Nightingale, who is doing some amazing work and is going to talk about some new approaches to dementia. On the 20th, we have Gary Johnson with the Better Business Bureau, who will be with us, and we will also have a woman who's wrote a beautiful book about her experience with her husband's dementia. On the 14th, we'll be doing a dementia chat. So take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.